Furious Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours, with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and I am still absolutely buzzing to have this, my 1973 Rover P6 3005, the V8 with a 4.6 in it, back home and actually running at last. I'm monumentally excited by this whole situation. So excited in fact that in time for the NEC we actually had mugs of the car printed, so people like the NEC who came to say hello could actually walk home with a P6 in black V8 picture mug to go enjoy their morning coffee in. Now I'm back home from the NEC and I've got a little bit of time on my hands. This will finally be going on the general store, so by the time you see this video that would be available to buy right now on the Furious Driving store, along with nice woolly hats ready for the winter time, which is upon us already because it's awfully chilly. Right, so enough talking about the ever so cool merch. Head to furiousdriving.co.uk if you want to get yourself one of those. It's also got the Furious Driving logo on the back. Now admittedly I haven't done a great deal to this car since it came home because of the NEC basically. That takes up an inordinate amount of time, and then it rained an awful lot. So Storm Kieran, Storm Doug or Debbie, whatever it was that came after it, and the car has been thankfully staying pretty dry underneath the cover. So I can now, it's not raining anymore, crack on with a list of jobs, which is surprisingly long because when the car went away back in January, I had a list of jobs that I was working through, but I just needed to get the car started as well as everything else. So I'm not going to get this done in one day. This video is going to take a couple of days to shoot, but I'm going to crack through as many of these as I possibly can. So I'll quickly talk you through what I want to get on with. Right, this isn't necessarily the order they will be done in, but it's the order they struck me as I noticed. First of all, a fuel line, because currently the fuel line on the car is pretty perished and I don't know how old it is, so that needs to get changed out so the car doesn't catch fire. Currently running off a spare jerry can on the bumper, which is not ideal. Secondly, drain the fuel tank, because the stuff that's in there looks like iron brew that's gone flat, which is not going to run the car particularly well. So that's two fairly substantial jobs in their own right. Secondly, and very importantly, adjust the gear selector, because I know plenty of people noticed this when I was revving the engine previously. The car moved when it was in park, so that's not actually in park, and there's a little selector on the side of the gearbox and some adjusters on that, so I need to get underneath the car and figure out how to adjust that. Easier to just stick a manual in probably, but we'll get to that later. Now next up, connect up the choke cable and the throttle cable. Both of those are just dangling loose because the carburetor has been on and off several times and those cables are doing little. Then we've got more fluids. Basically all the fluids in this car need to be changed. The brake fluid wants me to be flushed because that is donkey's years old, and you know, it's got a fairly big engine in there. We want it to be stopping fairly well, so flush all the brake fluid out. And then also the other fluid in this thing, the ATF, that is going to be low and old as well, so we'll give that a flush out too, because I've already had this auto Borg Warner thing built once before because there was it ran out of fluid and burnt itself out. I don't want to burn it out again. I mean, I don't want to use it, but if I take it out and sell it, I want it to be working. It's not going to be necessarily a big deal to change all that fluid. I think you have to have the engine running though to do it, because of it's all the pumping action of those things. So once the engine, well now the engine's running I should say, I can refresh that fluid. So it's all the fluids changed in the car. Speaking of fluids, we need a header tank for the radiator, because as you noticed in the last video with this car, we ran it and it was going really well, but then it got hot and then it just blasted all its coolant out in a big cloud of steam. That's because there's no header tank to catch all that. Normally when the radiator does that point, it goes to a header tank and then it comes back again. So need to get a header tank. I don't think it's ever had one. I think it's always just jettisoned its watered down bulkhead, which is not good. Speaking of the radiator, we need a fan, because the fan that's on here, because this fan here, which should be on the engine, has got 4 little lug holes, a centre hole and a little pinhole just to sort of locate it in the correct position. It's a weird 5-blade fan. It goes onto the pin just about, but these holes are slightly too small. There's an aftermarket water pump, it's a brand new water pump on there, so what I'm thinking is the new water pump has got slightly oversized lumps, so it doesn't want to do up. So leave that one off and maybe go and grab ourselves an electric fan, which is more efficient, uses less power, uses less fuel, and that's a good thing. Then of course people keep commenting about the fact that the wings aren't on there, so I need to go underneath here, check this out, make sure there's no rusty spots or anything on there, but I don't think they're on this side. There might be another side, but there is some exposed metal, so get some grinding done, get some painting done, so this is all nice and solid, not going to cause me grief, and then put the wings back on. Right, so and a slight delay thanks to an awful lot of rain. Thankfully I was able to get the correct size cover back on the car, because I had the Mercedes 123's cover on at first, which is way too big, and especially with that a lot of water up underneath it, so the car's getting wet again, which is not ideal. Also, when the rain was coming down really hard the last couple of days, I noticed there was a little leak in the boot of the 75. So I did do the fix for that, which is thankfully a really easy fix. The little 10mm plastic nuts on the back of the chrome trim on the inside of the boot. So you undo them, take off the big plastic rubberized washer, bit of silicone sealant, tighten it all up, and bada bing, hopefully you've got a nice watertight boot again. Fingers crossed. Now, because this is an engine swap and it's not going well, I'm eating stroop waffles to channel my inner rich rebuilds, so hopefully we can crack through some stuff. Now, I'll show you what I've done so far. I remembered last night that the hashtag not my BMW that was sitting on the neighbour's drive for quite a while actually had a couple of spare electric fans for the radiator, which I liberated when the car was being taken away and bits were being dumped. So I remembered I had that in the garage, so I've ordered up a fan controller, which hopefully I can adapt to make work with that. And so then I can not have to worry about the metal fan, I can just plonk that on the back of there, hoping that's actually going to fit. I'll try that in a moment. It might be too thick with the depth of that water pump, but we'll have a look. Secondly, I've spent a lot of the morning sorting out a throttle linkage, because it's a funny old thing down here. It comes up here off like a twist bar kind of arrangement, pushes up, and this rod here has to turn. But unfortunately, in order to make it fit, you have to slot things in and then screw them together, but bits were missing. So we've got like a tube that goes over a hard rod, which I've drilled out a bigger hole in and put a screw through, which is a flat-ended screw rather than a sharp one, so I'm not going to injure myself in the future. Got that done. Right, that's the status report where we are now. I'll be honest, it's taking a long time. I'm struggling to find much motivation in this cold weather, but we'll keep on trying. People keep on saying though, why don't I put a lean-to, like a carport across here? There are some big posts I put in when I had to have the fence rebuilt a little while ago that are tall enough for a carport, and I've got everything ordered up. It's just the cost of it. It's going to be about another £1,000 in components, plus obviously a day of my time to make it all fit. So if anyone wants to crowdfund about £1,000 they can pay to Wix so I can get those bits of wood and plastic roof in, then do carry on. Bother. So much for plan B. It is big enough for the radiator, but it is way too deep. It's not going to get past the water pump underneath it. That's a pain. A fan this size is about 70 quid. Well, this is an unusual turn of events. I was just trying to drill through the holes in here to make them a tiny bit oversized, seeing as the electric fan is not going to fit. I can definitely find a different home for that though. I'll come back to you another day. This is an interesting thing. Thought I drilled through. In fact, I've drilled the drill narrower. I've never seen that happen before. Whatever Rover used to make this fan all those years ago is harder than a tungsten drill. I'll come back to that later on. So I'm going to focus instead on this fuel line, which is definitely not original. It's probably from the 90s. And it looks really good, to be perfectly honest. You know, old fuel line is old fuel line, so that is going to be chasing that back down. It actually only goes down here as far as the fuel reserve tap. I think we definitely want a new Jubilee clip on this. Right, so that came off in the end with the aid of a scalpel, because it was utterly well and truly welded on to the T-piece off the back of the fuel tap. I had to scalpel it off and then pry it off with screwdrivers. It actually looks all right in a lot of places, but getting close, this is actually quite nastily cracked. So this is definitely a fuel line you don't want in the engine bay like this. That would be potentially a massive fire happening. Looking under the car, I think it's hard line from the fuel tap back to the fuel tank, but I will go underneath the car and double check that. Meantime though, that can be changed for proper nice fuel. I will save this a moment though, because I need to drain the fuel tank still, and that will slide nicely down through the fuel filler to the bottom so I can suck that all out. Not in the bin yet. Brilliant. Right, so there we go. Now, brand new Jubilee clips, brand new fuel line, and even new cable ties holding a lovely bit of new fuel line in here. So we've got a functioning, non-leaky, non-dangerous fuel system in the front of the car. Now to the back of the car to go and remove the trucker's tyres there from the tank. Right, well, I just flipped the fuel cap open for the first time since I've had it. Just realised how much goop is sitting here around the fuel filler, where all that tree mush has been collecting in there. So I'm going to stuff that in there so I'm going to fill the tank with gorableness. Gorable, is gorable a word? I think it probably isn't. Try and clean this mush off of here. So don't inadvertently fill the fuel tank with extra gubbins we don't want. Doing the airline out here actually. Unfortunately, it's on the other side of that wall, and it's a long way around. So yeah, I might do with Manual airline. Right, okay, so for my international viewers, Tizer is a soft drink which is bright orange in colour. And Trucker's Tizer is what you find bottles of at truck stops where they don't have any toilet facilities. And it's not something you want to be drinking, but it is exactly what this looks like inside here. Yeah, it's pretty yellow considering what colour it's meant to be. And we saw the jar of it that Hawk Classics had for us. Fortunately, I don't think there's much in the car. Not only does this stuff look absolutely disgusting, I mean, it looks like someone who with a severe urinary tract infection has passed it. It smells absolutely revolting, like a good old varnish. And this is meant to have been flushed out earlier in the year. So I don't know how it's gone this horrible this quickly. Unless it wasn't flushed out, but you know. Right, so I've just flicked the power on a second ago. The fuel pump has ticked until it stops ticking, which means it's primed, so that means the fuel system works. Also, the fuel gauge is off the bottom. I don't know if you can see that over there. Fuel gauge is off the bottom, which means we're out of gas, which is good. And that means I can fill it up with a few gallon cans of V-Power Super Unleaded, and that'll clear the fuel system out, and we are good to go. I'll also check underneath and make sure there's no other rubber line sections under the cup. But I think it's all hard line from the tank down to the reserve tap, or at least hard plastic line, but I'll double check that, of course. Now, while the cover's off the back of the car, because I'm not uncovering the car completely much at the moment, you can see while the car was in storage, I say storage, dumped in a yard for 10 months, a squirrel or something appears to have made a little home underneath a spare wheel, and it's all shredded up newspaper and stuff. So I'm going to get myself some gloves, first of all, very important, and a vacuum cleaner, also very important, and give us a bit of a clean up because it's grim in there. Now, annoyingly, there are a couple of car covers and some high-vis vests in the boot there, but I don't want to touch any of them because I might have rodent urine all over them, filled with disease. So they're all going straight in the bin, which is quite annoying. There we go. Evidence of rodents being in here, which is never a good thing. Now, this is all absolutely sopping wet in the bottom of the boot, and I don't know if it's rainwater that's got in or if it's a ton of squirrel pee which has soaked it, and I'm pretty annoyed regardless which one it is. So that carpet is actually pretty soggy down there, and the underlay stuff is pretty miserable as well. So I'm going to have to give this either a very good clean or replacement, and that I'll just replace. I think it's called jute or something, isn't it? Meanwhile, the boot itself turns out does actually have a pretty good boot floor, not rusty at all, just a little bit of surface rust to take care of at a future date, thankfully. Oh, right, so it was another wet, cold and miserable night last night. The only upside is that it did wash away most of the cat poo that a local moggy dumped down in front of the car. So when I've got to go underneath this car, I'm not going to be in quite so much cat feces. This is a very wee and poo related video, I've noticed. But two more bits of minor progress I'll quickly show you. Now, although I didn't completely drill through that hole for the water pump location nodule, just seemed to ream it out a little bit, that was enough. And I've now been able to mount the fan. Of course, it doesn't turn too easily because the crank pulley at the bottom does seem to be doing its little wibbly wobbly thing, which reminded me I've got to take the fan off again because that crank pulley bolt washer is missing, so I need to take this off again. I might take the radiator out to get a socket down there, it's quite tight. But anyway, that's done, that can come off again. Now I know it works, that's good, that'll do. Also, slight issue with the choke cable. There should be some kind of bracket or clamp or something to hold the choke cable in place so it doesn't move up and down. So when you pull the lever and push the lever on the dashboard, the cable stays where it's meant to. So I've just literally, as a very temporary measure, used a bit of insulation tape and cable ties just to hold it in place. But I'm going to have to go and find some little metal clamps of some sort to make that into a thing that stays where it's done. Anyway, so that's more progress, more things we can cross off, kind of ish, for the time being. Right, fan is back off again. This thing is absolutely brutal. It's sort of 2-3 millimeter heavy duty steel. I mean, this thing would hurt if you put your finger in that. There's actually a guard I need to put back on there as well, which I'll go and dig out the garage in a minute. Right, so it's not too hard to get down to this thing with the fan removed. Just need to slacken off this adjuster here on the alternator. One thing though that I haven't got on here, and this fan belt is technically too short, there should be a power steering pump just down here where you can't see it in the corner, but I could not figure out any orientation on that bracket which would put the pulley for the power steering belt anywhere in relation with anything else. So I'm going to get the car running and come back to that at a later date because honestly it's just not a major priority right now. I had forgotten that one of these ones, the one at the back, I'd actually set with an Allen key kind of bolt, so I had to go and find them at the back of the garage. Never quick and easy. Now without the fan belt holding it tightly in place, you can see how much this crank pulley moves. It's only the pulley, not the crank shaft itself, but that is quite a lot. Well, I've shuffled this thing back and forth with the ruler attached alongside it. It's moving an entire centimetre. That's quite a chunk of movement there. Right, so I've been through my extensive selection of ridiculously big imperial sockets. I think this is a 15/16 to get the crank pulley bolt off. I've also found this little stubby extension that I found up at the NEC Resto show back in the springtime, which I'm hoping means I don't need to take the radiator out, because what you find is without an extension bar, it's too deep to get a socket onto, and with an extension bar, it's way too long because the radiator's in the way. So hopefully, oh yes, haha, possible success. Oh, this is tight. This is super tight. Right, this is where it gets tricky, because it's not a manual gearbox. I can't really lock it. Because it's an automatic, I can't leave it in first gear, handbrake on, just yank it around. There's some people doing some gardening stuff down the road. There is a little hole around the back of the flywheel, but that means jacking the car up, and I'm far too lazy to do that. It means taking the radiator out and ugga-duggering it. Botheration. Let's go find a catch tank for all this water that's about to go gush everywhere. Look for the silver lining. There's always a silver lining. In this case, freezing cold nighttime temperatures, guaranteeing that the coolant's fresh. Best I can do. Right, okay, here we go. At least the radiator hoses I did actually replace not so long ago when I was working on the car in the garage, so these will at least come undone quite easily. New water pump, new hoses. You know what I'm not happy with is this one just here, this little return hose from the heater, which has got a bit of a pinch to it because it's a brand new hose, but it's not quite the right shape. This is going to be a mess. Oh, okay. Oh, not much room to actually manoeuvre that hose pipe out of the way. Well, looking at the coolant that's coming out, I don't know what you can see of that. It smells quite coolanty, but it's not a very coolanty colour, so it's probably not a bad thing that I'm actually doing this, because last night the temperature was 0, and it's going to be a bit colder the next few days as well. Great, and now I just need only the little lugger, because they're not very tight down here. Now you'll notice I'm using an awful lot of Draper tools, just because I rate them really highly, including this little mini lugger and this little short stubby thing, both from Draper stuff, and of course this really handy multi-sized socket tray. All this stuff is available on the Amazon affiliate store, which, if you click on that, it does help pay for the channel, because we get a tiny kickback of a few pennies every time anyone buys anything from off of Amazon. Helps keep the channel going so we can buy all the stuff that we constantly need to keep on fixing cars. Oh, this has got, oh no. I'd forgotten about that. Because this is an automatic, it's got an oil cooler in the bottom. Which means taking it out means you're going to drain all the blooming gearbox fluid out as well. Bum. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. That's unhelpful. Did have one bit of good news. I've realised if I lift up the radiator far enough, I can put an extension bar through the holes in the valance and slide it under the radiator and get to the crank bolt. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back, go and get the big ugga-dugger off my friend. Hopefully he's finished doing his job, because I can go and ugga-dugger that off, and then that's easy. Right, it's about to start raining, so I've got to do one other little thing which wasn't on my list, which I discovered. Got to sort out the finger guard, because the terribly dangerous fan needs a bit of finger protection. Right, so this is the finger guard that sits on top of the radiator. It's a little bit surface rusty, and there was a nice little sticker on there which I'm going to have to find a replacement for, because that is an original 70s thing. So it used to look like that little patch just there, which was quite nice. So now about 5 days into this very short video of trying to get the little snaggly irritating bits done, and the predicted rain has started coming down even earlier than the forecast thought it would do. So I'm going to have to button the car back up again, get it back under cover before the rain starts coming down. Everything seems to be running late. I did have one bit of good news, because I did finally manage to get into the boot of the Crown Victoria. I'll cut away to this for a second so you can see this. Right, so this engine bay is so dusty and cobwebby now, it's terrible. But as you can see, there's no inner wing in this engine bay yet. That is because I think it is in the boot, along with the car battery. But in order to get that boot open, I need to be pushing that button there, which does nothing because the boot is currently in the battery. So to do that, I'm going to have to... God, I don't think you can hear the wind rushing past me. It is... But it's like being in the Antarctic or something. It's just terrible. I'm going to use my topped on and try and hook up a jump start pack to the wires that I can find down here, and hopefully, yeah, I think they're pretty shockproof. Hopefully get enough juice into the thing to pop the boot open. Right, give it a moment because I've just put the GoPro on the bottom of the bonnet, so that does mean it will very shortly be dropping onto me quite hard. Now, I don't think that's going to start the car, but hopefully that will be enough to pop the boot. Although I noticed the interior light hasn't come on. Maybe this isn't enough. Nope. Right, well, I went off and did the school run, and yay, November is dark, but I've gone and found an actual battery, which is quite heavy. Can't put it in the car because there's nowhere to put it. There's also the wrong kind of battery, but it does mean I can hook this thing up to an actual battery rather than a lithium thing, which I think was being confused by the well, general lack of carness that was going on. Ooh, sparky spark. Is that going to be enough? Oh, we've got under bonnet light this time. That's new. And the boot is open. I do wonder if this means I can actually start the car. Oh, I never thought I'd miss those chimes. There we go. Let's put the interior light on. Oh, there we go, red light because cop car in park. That's a no for that battery. Oh, it's got AM radio time. On thing that we had for the promo a few weeks ago is coming into its own. And there's the crook lock. I've been looking for that. Arch liner. And the batteries is not a one-handed lift with one hand on the camera. Now, when I mentioned this on Twitter earlier on today, someone did actually reply, go and read the manual because there'll be a manual override. I said, yes, there is a manual override. It's here, so if you're locked in the boot, you can get out. It's not in the car because, well, cop car. Which means that I can now go and put the inner wing back into the car and put the battery back in and move that, and that means this car can go indoors, the W123 can come back out here. At least it's going to get wet under a cover, unfortunately, again, but I am still waiting on the now delayed a week timber, so I can start putting the cover over here so the W123 will be dry as well. Everything's happening all at once, as always. But yeah, I mean, this is on the road, Crown Vic's going to be on the road, W3 is going to be on the road in no short order. However, let's have a quick look at what we managed to achieve today in this video. So, the fuel line is sorted out, the fuel tank is drained. I didn't adjust the gear lever because I think I need the engine to be able to run, so I can check that I'm actually adjusting it correctly, otherwise I could be adjusting it worse and worse without realising, and currently I've left it in a position it won't run. I've connected the choke cable, sort of 90%, but you know, it's there, but I just need to, I don't know, tap and drill a hole in the side of that little bracket and then run a grub screw there. Maybe that might do the trick. A lot of work though, but I'll figure something out. Connected the throttle cable properly, that's all good now. That's not got any slack or play in it. Haven't done the brake fluid yet, but then there's cat poo down here now, and I don't want to lie in that, so I want the car to be able to move so I can move it forwards away from here. And also, more practically, that front wheel needs to be available for me to bleed the brakes. So yeah, need the car to move. ATF, likewise, need the engine running. Radiator header tank. Oh, I bought one. I bought a really nice one. It's like an anodized metallic black one. Looks beautiful. But then I checked the invoice from Amazon, and it turns out it's an oil header tank rather than a water header tank. However, because of the nature of this radiator, whoops, this is a very old-fashioned style of radiator cooling system. I think this is probably going to be okay because it's got a separate vent for pressure on the cap itself. So yeah, we're probably okay with this actually. I might just run it because it looks really nice. So it's, I'll close up there. It looks pretty cool. I managed to get one coat of undercoat primer on the finger guard to go on top of the radiator before the rain started. That's now in the garage drying. What else did we get to? Oh yeah, the fan, yeah, we've made the metal fan fit now, so that's a good thing. We'll come back to the electric one at a later date because I've got other plans for this car. Once the car is running, there's going to be other changes. It's going to keep on evolving. So we'll come back to the electric fan another time. Inner wings, didn't get that done because the weather's just been horrible. And fit the wings, obviously didn't do that because that's part 2 of that job. Right, so this is where we've got to after several days of tinkering in the rain. once this car's back in the garage again, we can definitely make faster progress. Oh yeah, the crank pulley, which I don't think is actually on here. I should write it on there. Crank, imagine it's a crank pulley bolt. I now know how big the washer needs to be, so I can, as soon as I can get my agar-dugger back, whip it off, whip it on with a washer. Huzzah! Right. Now, as always, thank you for watching, I appreciate your time. Please do hit like and subscribe, it makes a massive difference to the channel because YouTube thinks you like the thing, so other people will like it as well if you hit either of those two buttons. Hit the bell notification because I know a lot of people have not seen the latest videos even though they are subscribed, so do hit the bell notification as well. It's coming up to Christmas time, so head on down to furiousdriving.co.uk because we've got woolly hats, we've got loads of different mugs now, all kinds of stuff waiting to make your Christmas perfect. And the Amazon affiliate store, of course, if you need any tools. I think that's all the advertising stuff done. Right, thank you for watching and join us again next time. Well, I don't know what car I'm going to be working on. It really depends what the weather does. I'm working hard behind the scenes to get stuff done, ready to make the Mini happen because that is obviously a huge project, but I need some bigger tools and I need some other stuff to happen. Anyway, right, thank you for watching. Join me again soon. Goodbye.